No. All right, everybody. Well, welcome back to another edition of the TriState Football Monday Night Rewind. Of course, as always, I am your host, Daniel Kuhn, along with my co-host, Jacob Berkemeier. And we're here to talk about everything that went down in the Cincinnati tri-state area for high school football in week number 5. Halfway through the regular season, which is hard to believe.
It's crazy, dude.
It's going by quick. But as always, we had some great great games to talk about from the past weekend. Of course, one of the bigger rivalries in the city that Jacob's going to cover. And then we had some good games that went on over in Kentucky as well. But Jacob and I were talking a little bit briefly before the show started. And since it's the halfway point of the season, we both decided we wanted to give some schools that maybe we don't talk about as much because obviously, the same schools typically try to kind of dominate the headlines, and that's just kind of the way it goes, right? The news cycle always keeps the same schools at the top. But we wanted to talk a little briefly about some of the schools that have made a really good impression on us this year, have had great starts to their seasons that we don't talk about a lot. Jacob, since I've already ranted for a minute and a half, I'll let you go first.
I'll do a little minute here, a little quick minute. So Taft is definitely one of the schools that has caught my attention, and I know we talked about that earlier. But Taft is off to a 5-0 start. Just beat Thurgood Marshall 51-0 on Saturday. So I mean, I think it's Taft. We talked about a little bit last week, but I think they have a really good chance to kind of go far in the playoffs this year and make a lot of noise. And I think as the season kind of winds down, we'll talk about them a lot more once we start getting closer to playoff time and everything. Another school I wanted to highlight, North College Hill. They're 5-0 in the Miami Valley Conference. They haven't played any conference games yet, but they're at the top of the standings. And, looking like they'll have a pretty good season. They beat, I think, North College Hill's Division 4, and they beat West High 23-8 last week. So West High is D1 school, even if West High isn't the school that it used to be back in the day, a powerhouse. It's still really good whenever you pick up, a win against a team that's 3 divisions ahead of you.
Yeah, right.
And then kind of the third school I wanted to highlight was just Middletown right now. Middletown's 4-0 in the GMC and 5-0 in conference play. And I know they've had kind of a lighter schedule to start the year, but they have West, East, Mason, Hamilton, Princeton. That's how they finish off their schedule. So be really telling. They've gotten off to a really good start, hot start, crazy point differential right now. They have 154 points scored to 31 points allowed. So doing really good with all that stuff. And right now at the top of the GMC. So definitely a team to keep your eye on. But I'll kind of toss it back over to you and, have you kind of highlight a few more teams.
Yeah, I'll actually, keep it. You mentioned the Miami Valley Conference and the great season, start to the season that North College Hill has had. But I think it's also worth noting what CHCA has done in their early part of their season. Now they sit at 4-1. They did lose to Versailles. I think that's how you say it, Versailles. Maybe I don't. That word can typically kind of get a little funky, but they lost that game, and they only lost by I think it was 35-21. So not necessarily a blowout loss by any means, but every other game they've played, they've thoroughly handled this year, and that's we think about the Miami Valley Conference, you automatically kind of go, okay, well, Roger Bacon, right?
Yeah.
North College Hill, you know what I mean? And that's not to take away from North College Hill at all. Jacob made a great point. Yeah. They're off to such a great start this year. But CHCA is just not, not necessarily the school we always think about when we think about the Miami Valley Conference. And it's worth noting that the great season they've had in their season. Of course, this past Friday night, they beat Aiken 38-0, and Aiken's no slouch either. So a nice non-conference win, but still a nice win for them. Their point differential is pretty impressive. They're sitting right now at 187 points for, 48 against. So great start to the season for the Eagles. And then I'll briefly kind of hop over to Northern Kentucky area and talk about my favorite team name of all time, the Juggernauts. That's a personal favorite of mine. That's such a cool team name. And I think we've briefly mentioned them maybe once or twice in the past few weeks. But Lloyd Memorial off to a 5-0 start this year. You think about some of the big players over in Northern Kentucky. You don't necessarily always think about Lloyd, but the
Yeah.
Juggernauts have had a great start to the year, sitting, like I just said, undefeated to this point, and then they had a nice win against Campbell County, which obviously Campbell County is a much larger school than they are. So, in order, to get a nice win like that is, I think, really boosts them for the rest of their year. And then finally, I know it's not necessarily, oh, we want to talk about the smaller schools. Yes, of course we do. We're trying to fit in as many as we can. But I would be remiss, just because I'm not talking about their game tonight in depth, I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Cupcath. 3-0-2 start to the season. Lost to two good schools. Kind of felt like they were a little bit adrift. And didn't really know which direction their season was going to go from that point. And they've answered the call. They've won three straight, rattled off three big wins. I know they beat Simon Kenton pretty handily, but this past weekend they handled Beechwood, and we talk a lot about Beechwood being that kind of like that one school in North Kentucky, man, you've got to keep your eye on because they're just so dominant in their division or their region, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And Covcath went into Beechwood, which, by the way, if you've never been to a Beechwood football game, it's not an easy environment to play in. It's not a big stadium, but man, they get loud. I'll never forget when they set off fireworks, and I did not know that was happening.
Scary a little bit.
It did. Not gonna lie. That almost was as bad as most scared I've ever been in a football game, and I played on Moeller's practice squad for 2 years, so that goes to show you how scared I was. My point is they've righted the ship. I think they're on the right path to having another great season. Of course, Cupcat's got a long and tenured history in North Kentucky, very successful. But going 0-2 to start your year and then rebounding with three straight wins against three quality opponents is worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think all the teams that you highlighted there, they all deserve their shine, especially with Covcath too. I think having Cash Harney back there, he makes a difference. And first couple of games, I think he had one interception. I think both of those games. I'm not sure if he's cleaned up some of the turnover problem like he had in the first couple of weeks, but he's really talented and dual threat QB. And it's good for Cupcath to kind of get back on track and be 3-2 and probably shape up, pretty well for the rest of their season. So
absolutely. All right, Jacob. I think we'll just throw it back to it into our featured games, I should say. And Jacob was so lucky to be there in person at West Claremont High School, which is going to take some getting used to. As far as I remember, Moeller always played at Lockland and still does in my mind, but they don't anymore. They split their games across the city, but they played at West Claremont and they hosted their arch rival, St. X.
Yeah. It was that atmosphere there. Before I even really talk about the game, it was 6,000 tickets sold out, standing room only, both stands just filled to the brim. Some of the stars were out. Cam Taylor-Britt from the Bengals was there watching the game. Deuce McBride from the New York Knicks and a Moeller alum, he was there watching the game. And, honestly, the scoreboard, you see the final and it's 30-13. You're like, oh, like Moeller killed him. And really, it was 17-13 going into halftime. So it was a really close game. But honestly, what surprised me most with Moeller was just their run game. They did a really, really good job controlling the football in the run game. And Ponatowski, he had 26 passing attempts and went 16 for 26, 136 yards, touchdown, interception. But they had 32 rushes as a team, and Tyler Jocelyn and Dante Ware were doing a great job of really just running hard, picking up positive yards almost every play. Offensive line did a great job. But so Jocelyn went 16 for 93 and a touchdown, and Ware went 11 for 72 with a touchdown. So, and they're both kind of, smaller running backs, but they just run really hard. And tell you the biggest standout, and he kind of has been for the last 3 games, is junior receiver Reggie Watson. This kid's 5'6", super quick. But one of the balls the only touchdown that Ponatowski threw was to Reggie Watson. It was impressive. It was a slot fade to him. I mean, perfectly placed ball right over the shoulder, and he went up and grabbed it. And he's been his favorite target, I think, these last 3 weeks, going for close to 10 catches, 100 yards, touchdown last 3 games. And I don't want to not talk about X at all, because I think X was really just, a few plays here or there, like converting a third down, or like at the end of the half, for example, like first half, X had a drive with 2 minutes to go in the half. They get the ball down, end up, can't remember if it was a 4 and out, like if they went for it on fourth down or punted, but then Moeller was able to get the ball back with about 50 seconds or 40 seconds. They were able to drive down the field, and their kicker, what's his name? Yeah, Jack Malabar. He drilled a 52-yarder to end the half. So, I mean, that's a crazy luxury to have as a team if you have confidence in your kicker booting a 50-yarder, and he's only a junior too, so they'll have him next year as well. But I think that made a difference, honestly, in the game too, because fourth quarter, Moeller didn't even score a touchdown. They just kicked a couple of field goals, but those field goals took it from an 11-point game to a 17-point game, and that makes a huge difference when you got the clock kind of working against you. And I think X just really didn't get a lot out of their run game. I think if they would have gotten more out of the run game, they would have been okay. Jackson Frey had a solid day, 18 for 30, 2 TDs, 1 pick, and the pick was kind of closer to the end of the game. And Cam Taylor for St. X, he's still their top dog at receiver. He had 5 receptions for 66 yards. But yeah, I mean, it was a great atmosphere, great game to be at. Moeller definitely showed that they can find multiple ways to win too, whether it's, defense getting stops consistently, or like this week, the run game really helped them out. And I'm sure there'll be a game down the road where Ponatowski throws for 350, 4 touchdowns, and that's how they win. But they did a really good job just playing complementary football last week. And I mean, just like I said, that atmosphere was awesome to see. So it's definitely a really good game to be at. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Just a few short, quick things so we can keep it rolling. First thing is as far as I can remember, and I'll admit I grew up around both schools. If you haven't figured out that I went to Moeller yet, then you probably just haven't been listening hard enough. Uh, but I had a lot of family go to St. X growing up, and there's always just a very competitive rivalry, and
Yeah.
kind of seems like it was always going back and forth, right? One school would kind of have a 1 or 2 year run where they were kind of on top, and then the year after that, or 2 years after that, the other school would find a way to string together a couple of wins. And I'd have to do some fact checking, but Moeller is up to 7 straight wins now, regular season and post, against St. X. And I can't recall anything in my past where it's been this one sided, and that's not to speak down on St. X at all. It's just surprising, because, like I said, this has always been a rivalry that's kind of gone back and forth. And it's interesting to see where it'll go from here, especially if these two schools end up beating again in the state playoffs, which it feels like they do every year now.
Yeah. I would not be surprised by that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we come to that again here later in the year. And I'll get to my second point. Like you said, the scoreboard at the end of the game, I don't think is reflective of Moeller's just that much better of a team. I think St. X is still neck and neck. They've got one of the better squads in the entire state. I was going to say city, and then say and maybe the entire state. They've got one of the best squads in the city, and maybe the entire state. I jumped ahead of myself there a little bit, but what it boils down to, and I wrote the recap for this game, is you mentioned it. I mean, come on, a junior who can kick a ball 50 yards. I mean, that's having like a blackjack hand, a really good hand of blackjack, right? I mean, that's just a little bit of a secret weapon you've got in your back pocket. And like you said, Moeller, St. X does the same thing. You find ways to win if you're a good team, and this was just a battle of two good teams.
Yeah. And I mean, absolutely in regards to the kicker too, because if you can have confidence trotting your kicker out from 50 yards, just most teams in high school, I mean, even in college, Most teams in
right.
college don't have that luxury
Mm-hmm.
of being able to rely on a kicker to hit a 50-yarder. So you have that in high school, and especially as Moeller continues with this super tough schedule that they play and going into the playoffs, having a kicker like those 3 points might swing the game for you. And I really think that's when the momentum shifted, was just hitting a. It's like X could have came down the field and tied the ball game up at, or it would have been 14-13, I think, because X missed a PAT early on. But instead, you end up getting rid of the ball, giving it back to Moeller, and then they're able to drive down and put 3 more points on the board. So I think that's kind of when the momentum shifted. But, great game from the number 1-2 teams in the city. And, I'm expecting them to meet again in the playoffs, and we'll see if, X responds when they meet in the
Yeah,
playoffs.
I
But
think
I
I
guess
do
I
think.
will. Oh, yeah.
No, you're
Go
fine.
ahead.
I'll say one other thing. I don't want it to sound like I'm dogging on the Bombers here. I'm not.
Yeah.
It's just surprising that it's gotten to the point where it is 7 wins. It's impressive, I think, from a standpoint of, you look at a rivalry. Rivalries are typically, you know what I mean, very, very close and very,
Yeah.
very one sided. So it's worth giving Moeller their credit for winning 7 straight.
Yeah.
Anyways,
And
I'll just roll into my game, and I'll try to do it quickly because I know we're trying to keep you mindful of everybody's time. I will go back to Kentucky. That's kind of like my bread and butter these
yeah.
days. But
Yeah.
big game between Highlands and Ryle. Kind of, I think, the pinnacle, or you look at the landscape of Northern Kentucky football right now, and I think these are the 2 teams that stand out the most. And Highlands did inevitably end up winning this game. And Jacob, I'll give you one guess if you can guess how Highlands took control of this game and won.
Going off of the ticker, probably Taden Lorenzen.
I didn't even think about the ticker when I asked you that question. But
Yeah.
yes, you'd be correct. Taylor Lorenzen is, at this point, I'm not sure if you're a defensive coordinator for a team opposing Highlands, how you stop it effectively at this point. Because it feels like Tatum puts up the same stat line every week, and that is a indicament of how good he is. But
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the stat line, from a passing standpoint, Rio Littmer, he's kind of been around a long time at Highlands. He went 5-9 for 45 yards, right? So there lies what the Bluebirds are going to do. Tatum Lorenzen, 25 rushing attempts, 25. That is a
That's
really
crazy.
high number.
Yeah.
94 yards,
For your QB.
3 touchdowns. Now, I already said 25. I don't know if they consider Taden Lorenzen a quarterback as much as he just plays the Wildcat and runs it. He did have 2 passing attempts, but for the most part, he just runs like quarterback draws, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Gabe Williams, their other running back, he had 11 rushes as well. So you're looking at, a whopping total of, this is including other players as well. I won't read off all of the names, but 44 rushing attempts for Highlands throughout the game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty clear what they expect to do, and they do it effectively. And then you look at it from the other side of the perspective, like Ryle, we've talked about. Jacob Savage has been a contender for Mr. Football in Kentucky for a while now. And he's kind of viewed in that same. Now, obviously, he doesn't play out of the shotgun from a quarterback's position or a wildcat position.
Yeah.
But Jacob Savage is Ryle's bell cow. So you've got 2 squads meeting up that are both like hard nosed, we're going to run the football down your throat. And the final score of the game ended up being 24-28. So clearly a very well matched even game. Jacob Savage went 20 rushing attempts, so 5 less than Tate Lorenzen, but still a very large amount. He had 101 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Nathan Varax, 8 for 13, 132, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And I think the what really kind of decided this game is when you've got 2 teams that are so reliant on running the football with 2 very good tailback, quarterback, whatever you want to consider, Tate Lorenzen. You've got to figure out some way to differentiate the game from a defensive standpoint. And that typically means winning the turnover battle. There was only one
Mm-hmm.
turnover in this game. Nathan Barax threw an interception, and it was excuse me, and it was Gabe Williams. Mentioned him already when from a running back perspective. In the defensive side of the ball, he picked it off, took it 42 yards to the house. So pick six.
Wow.
There's
Yeah.
the
Like
score
six.
there's the score that defined the game, right? We can sit here and talk about
Mm-hmm.
Tatum Lorenzen and Jacob Savage as much as we want, yes, and rightfully so. But like I said, when you got two teams that are very effective at running the ball, it's going to be a close contest. So you've got to find something to set yourself apart, and Highlands was able to do that with the defensive points.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see where the rest of the season goes. I think for Ryle, if you look at their current record, it's not pretty. And I don't think necessarily. I mean, they're sitting at 2-3, but when you consider who they lost to Cooper, they lost to Christian Academy in Louisville, who are a very good team, and then they
Mm-hmm.
lost to obviously lost to Highlands. Those are three quality losses. I think
Yeah.
that does not their season has not sunk. I know we talked about Ryle kind of being primed to make it back to Lexington at the end of the year. I don't think
Yeah.
that they're where they currently are means that they're not going to make it. I look
Well, and
when they
all of Ryle's losses are only one score too,
yeah
and
mm-hmm.
it's. I think some of the issues can be kind of fixed, and I'm looking at these games box scores here, and there's interceptions in 2 out of those 3 games that it's like
Mm-hmm.
that might be the one play that kind of swings the momentum a little
Right.
bit. So, um, but yeah, I think Ryle's okay, and they'll end up finishing the year out pretty strong. They have Tate's Creek, which I know absolutely nothing about. No apologies to anybody from Tate's Creek if you're
I
tuning
wasn't
in.
going to mention it. I did. I was like, I don't know who Tate's Creek is, but
Yeah, but then they play Camel County, uh, Great Crossing, Simon Kenton, and Dixie. So I think you have a chance to kind of build some momentum if you're Ryle to
yeah,
finish the year out. And then just kind of touching on Highlands a little bit. I mean, what you were saying, you got to some teams are going to have to find a way to stop Tatum Lorenzen. And I don't know if that's stacking the box with 8 people.
mm-hmm.
And I'm sure some coaches have already tried that. But I think just his style of running is so tough to like plan
Mm-hmm.
against. I think it's a little bit easier if you're playing, like a fast running back where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we just have to set the edge, make sure we're not, don't allow anything breaking out to the outside. With him, it's like you have to come ready to play and come ready to tackle, especially. And
Yeah.
like that's if he gets ahead of steam going 5 or 10 yards, good luck to that safety who might
Mm-hmm.
be weighing in at like $170 or something.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's even the 160. So it's like once he gets that momentum kind of build up, it's just tough to bring down. And if they run the ball 44, 45 times a game, I mean, it
Yeah.
just wears on your defense after a
Yep.
while. So I
And
think
and
they
sorry,
have an
Joey.
identity. No, yeah, I'm about done. But they just have an
Which
identity and they are true to it. They don't really stray from it that often. And their identity is running the football.
yeah, the I said it at the beginning of my little recap. The one thing that you have to keep in mind with Tatum Lorenzen is, and this explains how he plays the game or how he runs the football. I should say he's almost got the same stat line every week, and that's because he's such a physical runner. It
Yeah.
feels like every time I check the box score and see how Highland scores most of their points, I feel like almost all of them are like 4 or 5 yard rushing touchdowns by Tatum Lorenzen. They just
Mm-hmm.
bully their way down into the red zone, and obviously he's just maybe he doesn't break off that big huge run every play, right? He's not like
Yeah.
running away from everybody like he said, but he's just consistently 5 yards, and like you just said, from a defensive perspective, there's nothing more. What's the word I'm looking for? Tiring. It wears you
Yeah.
down, right? Than
Mm-hmm.
than going up against a running back, a quarterback, whoever, whatever kind of player, whatever player it might be, that can run the ball like that.
Yeah.
That takes a lot out of you, and I think that it's going to take a lot. That you just said it. Maybe you stack the box. I don't know, but there's
But the problem
somebody.
is, I'm looking at some of these stat lines like Rio Littmer's not a slouch either. So it's
No,
like,
no, I yeah.
you stack the box and then it's like, Littmer's had a couple of games. Like he had one game where he threw against Campbell County he threw 29 times for 312 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. And, Taden Lorenzen had 2 carries for 7 yards that game. So I'm wondering if that was a game where Campbell County's like, you know what, we're just going to play 8 in the box and see what happens. And then that happens. So I think they have a very good complementary football between those two quarterbacks that you can kind of switch to whatever's going to work for that game.
For sure, and you brought a great point. That we should not, and we could sit here and talk about Taylor Lorenzen all night, and rightfully so. But Rhea Littmer's been there for a few years now, at least the last 2, and he was very, very good last year. Pre Taden Lorenzen, and even still now, he's still very solid. Under center for the Bluebirds. So
yeah.
All right, Jacob. I think we'll just roll into our last segment, and I have it pulled up. If you
Okay, yeah, that works.
I have it pulled up and can pull it up. But the Blitz 5 top 25, we're going to go through the rankings this week and talk a little bit about each of the teams, at least a sentence or two.
Yeah. And I will say we didn't even bring it up yet, but we'll see it on here. But Fairfield upset Lakota West this week too. 10-7.
Yes. We have not gotten to that yet.
Yeah,
so worth mentioning for sure.
So we will touch on that a little bit more here. But yeah, so we kind of already covered, Moeller and St. X here. So I don't think we really need to touch on that too much. But you see, St. X plays Elder. Who does Moeller play next week?
LaSalle.
Is it LaSalle? Yeah, LaSalle at the Mount, University of Delhi. Let's go. And then we got number 3, Anderson. So they did end up, we kind of touched on that last week too. Anderson and Kings, seeing if Kings would kind of put up a better fight, and they did. Yeah, I think that's the most points that have been scored on Anderson all year. But yeah, I mean, that stat's just crazy. 491 yards of total offense that's just terrible to play against as a defense, honestly.
Kings kept it close until about halftime, and then Anderson pulled away.
Yeah, so then you see Elder here. I mean, the Panthers are 5-0. They beat they were on the road and beat Louisville St. X. So huge road win there, and they kind of get St. X after a tough loss to Moeller. So we'll see. That'll be another great game, great rivalry game in the GCL. Elder, I think, has something to prove, and so does St. X after last week. So I think that has the makings to be a really good game, and I have a feeling, the under will happen. It will be like a 13-7 game or like something like that. I don't foresee a lot
GCL South football.
Huh? I don't foresee a lot of points being scored in that game. But then you talked about Highlands here. So they got 1-4 Harrison County coming up. So should be another, win here for the Bluebirds. Then LaSalle. I mean, LaSalle beat Fairmont last week, 24-23. They got their hands full next week with Moeller, though. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how they do against them. And talked about Kings a little bit. They have Lebanon. Lebanon has a solid team this year. So that Kings-Lebanon game actually shaping up to be a pretty solid one. And then you see Witten Woods there. So that's 3, for anyone keeping track, 3 ECC teams in the top 10 and 3 GCL teams in the top 10. Mm-hmm. And, was Princeton on there? Did I miss Princeton?
Yeah, they were number 5, I believe.
Number 5, yeah. So, and then one GMC school.
They handled Lakota East.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. 42-7. Wow. And then, so then we kind of moved down to, and they got Mason too. Taft, which we touched on earlier, they're, I think we said last week we were going through this, that Taft has a pretty good shot to finish top 10 for the year. And you see that stat right there. Won their last 2 games by 120 points. They do have a good Withrow team.
Yes, they do. Withrow's not bad. Yeah. That'll be
So
worth watching.
hopefully, that's a good test and challenge for both teams. And, you know, it's definitely more fun, I think, to play in some, closer games than just whooping up on everybody 50-0. And it'll help prepare both teams for the playoffs. You know, even what you said with Ryle too, here, they're still 11 in our rankings. And I
Hmm.
think that they will bounce back. Oh, Tate's Creek is 1-4.
Okay,
So,
we know something about Tate's Creek now. Sorry, Tate's Creek fans.
yeah. So hopefully Ryle can kind of get back on track here. They've lost 3 in a row. So definitely searching for a win big time. And then, yeah, you talked about Covcath with Beechwood beating them 42-14. It's a huge, huge win for Covcath. Yeah, averaging 51 during their 3-game winning streak. Then Mason beat Hamilton last week, and Mason does have D'Angelo Birch as their QB and 88 yards and 3 of the last 4 weeks. So I don't know if they're running a triple option up there at Mason. I
I
haven't
don't
gotten a
know.
chance. I haven't gotten a chance to watch any of their games, so I don't know what offense they're running. But it seems like D'Angelo Birch is definitely he's found a fit for himself that works. That's utilizing his legs a little bit, and it seems like Princeton too. Princeton hasn't seemed to really miss a beat without him either. So it's interesting there. And Middletown 5-0. They have Lakota West now, so huge game for Middletown here to kind of stay in control of the top spot in the GMC. Baden, we've talked about, here and there throughout the
Hmm.
show, the last 4 or 5 weeks, and they're still rolling. They're 5-0 and have CJ, which should be a
I
win.
find this surprising. I'm not gonna lie to
I
you.
feel like they struggled last year too.
Maybe they
Um,
did.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm not sure what's going on up at CJ, but definitely Baden's been running GCL co-ed this
For
year.
sure.
And yeah, that's kind of what we talked about earlier here. Fairfield and Lakota West. So Fairfield ends up beating Lakota West 10-7. And that's just a huge win, I think, for Fairfield and Justin Roden. So Justin Roden got hired there late in, I want to say like June almost, or maybe
Hmm.
May. Was kind of a late hire after Kraus kind of stepped down. And I think that's just a huge win for the confidence of their team and kind of the
Hmm.
school and the community to see that, he beat, kind of the perennial year in, year out top dog in the GMC. So huge win for Fairfield. And if you're Lakota West, they kind of got to get the train back on the tracks and
Get
not
right
let the
game.
season not let the season get away from them. But yeah, and I mean they have Middletown who's undefeated, so you don't really have a lot of time to breathe and relax. You kind of just got to roll with the punches and bounce back next week. So and then you see East there as well. East plays Fairfield. They're coming off a rough loss to Princeton, so both of those teams are. Fairfield's got momentum. East is looking to bounce back. And Withrow Taft, sneaky game of the week,
Yeah, be a good game.
possibly. And I think Lebanon and Kings is also a sneaky game of the week.
Yeah,
I think most of the focus is going to go to Elder and St. X, but I think those 2 games are ones that you should keep your eye on as well because they will be good games. And
and
then
then
also this East Central game, too.
yeah, we don't talk a lot about this Indiana schools, but East Central in South Carolina is a very good game. Both of
Mm-hmm.
those are both very good programs.
Yeah. And then kind of rounding out the last 4 of our top 25, we have Cooper, which they lost to, seems like a pretty good team in DuPont Manual, but I'm not
Hmm.
I'm not super familiar with that program. Um, but Cooper looks like they can bounce back next week playing Connor, who Connor has struggled at 1-4 this year. I mean, I'll tell you one thing, Harrison, 2 or 3 years that they've kind of been
Yeah.
just moving along during the regular season, just stacking up wins and everything. So they have CHCA, which that'll be a good matchup at 4-1. 2 teams that are 4-1, and crazy. Harrison's averaging over 200 yards rushing per game as well.
Talk a lot about Tatum Lorenzen and Highlands and Ryle. Harrison's got it rolling.
Yeah, 200. And then, Beechwood, they lost to Covcath, which is like 3 divisions higher than them. So I don't think that's a loss that you can get super upset about. But they did have a 13-game winning streak snap there. So if you're Covcath, you also did that, which is, pretty cool and good. And then finally, Indian Hill, which we mentioned at the top of the show. They beat Marymount 35-0, and they play Taylor this week. So Indian Hill has been really good in that Cincinnati Hills League.
They have had a great year this year for sure. I think Coach Rodenberg is going to continue to keep having the boys rolling on the hill of the Indian Hill. They've had a great season, and I think they're going to continue to keep knocking them down.
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess that's about all we got for tonight.
Yeah,
so
it is. We've gotten it closer to the ever so elusive 30-minute mark. But I think it was a good show. Obviously, I think that us kind of going through some of those schools we don't talk about a ton at the top of the show was a nice little addition to our program. And I think we should keep doing it. And now, of course, it's worth keeping an eye on some of the schools we had mentioned, like North College Hill, CHCA.
Yeah.
Not that it wasn't in the first place, but it just brings it to your attention, right? It brought it to my attention, and I'm hoping it does for the viewers as well, because as always, it doesn't matter if it's D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, and so on in Ohio, and then all the regions in Kentucky, that there always is great football to be had around the tri-state.
There is talent at every level
of course,
around
absolutely.
here. So
it's always fun to talk about some of those unheralded schools from the we're not in the GCL, and we're not in the ECC, so no one wants to talk about it. So that's not necessary.
Yeah. Right.
Well, anyways, I think it was a good show tonight. We're going to be back again, of course, next week at the same time on Monday nights. I know there's a nice Monday Night Football game going on right now that people might want to go check out. I know I want to go check it out here in a minute. So everybody have a great rest of your week. We look forward to seeing you back here again next week at 8 p.m. on Monday night. And then, of course, as always, if you want to find our podcast after the live stream has ended, you can go check it out on any of our social media platforms. It'll be right there for you to just click and watch. And then, of course, if you prefer it on a podcast platform, you can find it anywhere you want: Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, wherever. And then, of course, all of Tri-State Football's amazing content. The 20th season will be on the brand new and improved TSF, TriStateFootball.com. That's all from me, Jacob. It's another great show. We look forward to seeing everyone again next week.
It'll be a good time next week. So, but yeah, we'll let you guys go and watch your Monday Night Football game between the Lions and the Ravens.
Go Detroit. I didn't say that. Anyways, everybody have a great night.